And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 4 good brothers. Ha 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 ha. We have our resident waifu hunter, good brother Coops, who is currently indisposed because he's watching the Super Bowl halftime show while we're doing this.
Shame.
So I'm going to be skipping his part. We have our resident cosplay fanatic, good brother Slick Rick.
God damn it, I wish I could get drunk right now. But for legal reasons, I can't. Luckily, that's a good thing because, god damn it, I'm not going to be near any of the drunk Chiefs fans right now.
I think you should be worrying less about Chiefs fans and worrying about whoever's stocking up on cheeseburgers.
Don't worry, that's Gordon Ramsay's issue right now in Vegas.
We have, making his GeekWatch debut, some of you may know him as Talking About Games, but to us he is Abraham L. Jaguar.
A pleasure to be here.
And the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zidari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zidari Enterprises would like to remind you that we have more than one stand creating arrow, and that is a threat.
So, the first joke I could make is, do you even pose, bro? But
every time I try to pose, my back gets broken.
Skill issue.
This is why you stretch.
But beyond that, this is a topic that I've had in the back burner for a while. We've come close to doing it, but then something happens and we end up kicking it down the road.
Usually an audible due to current events.
Pretty much. And I know some might say, but you're not a politics channel. You're right. Because most streamers who are covering those kind of things are fucking cringe. Or are massive fucking hypocrites. Or more often than not, both.
Not to mention the fact current events doesn't have to mean politics, and anyone who makes that assumption is kind of stupid and myopic.
Mm-hmm. No, but sometimes something happens within our usual spheres that forces me to call an audible. I'd honestly say a recent example would be the whole thing with Niji Sanji. Granted, at the time, I didn't know how much worse it could get, and it was already pretty bad when we covered it.
Yeah, if we had waited just a little bit longer, we could have covered in full the glorious bullshittery and rise of our new Dragoon home, the previous life of Selentatsky, Doki Bird. Mm-hmm. And I don't give a shit what anybody out there says about past life privacy bullshit. She literally said on her Twitter, "Tell everyone where I am so they can find me again."
Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, I originally considered this topic right around the time that I first covered Overarms by Rookie Jet Studio, which is a damn good game, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And is one that could be used just as much for Persona as it could be for JoJo. And in fact, I'd say that Rookie Jet has a better of the people who've taken inspiration from that 2-die system that Ryutama uses. I think Rookie Jet Studio has a better understanding of it. Given that he, as opposed to I don't mean to keep picking on Rooster Emma, but there's stuff in Fabula Ultima that I can't let slide. I know that for a lot of people, that's their first taste of what we've all seen in indie tabletop, but that lack of guidance thing is something I'm always going to get on. And if you want details on that, go look at the review I did a while back.
Or look at any rant that we've ever had in Valley of the Judge regarding lack of guidance.
Mm-hmm. I do think lack of guidance will probably get its own musing down the road, and I'm pretty
Including my reviews, I always attack Fabula Ultima because of the lack of guidance as well.
You're not the only one. Notepad did the same thing. He was just a little bit less subtle about it.
A little
Strangely
more
enough,
acerbic.
he didn't like overarms.
Well, it's a free country, and he is free to be wrong.
No, from what I hear, Notepad tends to have a more pessimistic outlook on games in general.
Mm-hmm.
So
He did say that I'm more glass half full.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that you're more glass can be filled with multiple liquids. Choose your favorite, please.
Mm-hmm. But even I guess the more succinct way to put it is the pessimist looks at the glass half empty. The optimist looks at the glass half full. I look at it as why should I just stick with water in the glass?
Exactly. Exactly.
But
you don't know if it's water in that glass. Go ahead and smell it. It might be vodka.
It sounds like a Grand Blue situation. You know that manga, the anime from the scuba divers?
Grand Blue Dreaming, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But getting past that,
rails.
Yeah, back on the rails. The idea of doing JoJo style campaigns is nothing new. There's been plenty of fan projects, and there is something to be said about the fact that shonen battle manga seem to lend themselves very, very well to TTRPG adaptations compared to other genres of manga.
Mm-hmm.
And normally someone might go, is it possible that you're just not looking wide enough at the totality of manga? And I'm like, no. It's been over the last 20 years, a pattern has emerged. Because Bleach has had its own attempt at TTRPG with Bleach D20. Naruto has had Naruto D20 Modern, as well as Naruto 5e, which we will cover one day. One Piece has had its own D20 take, and those are just the bigger ones. Of course, I could bring up how, say, Hiroaka has had one by our buddy Vincent in the form of Super Breaker, and it keeps going. There's various reasons as to why, but JoJo is no exception. And I think one of the things that certainly helps is the classification system when it comes to stands. Even if it's not a stat system in the traditional sense, it is a benchmark that can be used. And a good game designer will be able to look at that grade system that it has and build a whole system around it. I should know because 1, I've done it. 2, there was the ability codes that were in the Saga system that was basically doing that, just with different letterings. Because you had your ability score and your ability code because Saga wasn't class based.
Mm-hmm.
And as I looked into this kind of thing, the idea of just doing what we usually do with building the equation, but building it around constructing JoJo stands came to mind. Thus, the subject matter for this particular episode. but I do think it's important to lay the groundwork when it comes to stands. Now, for a good chunk of the people here, this is going to be redundant, but it is important to nail down what a stand actually is, just so we have all our bases covered. And Zan, I'll let you handle the skinny when it comes to that, since you are the evangelist.
So you want me to explain to everybody what a stand is?
At least the basics of it.
Okay, so in general, stands arose as there was a nonsensical reason for them, as a sort of second body or second power that arises from the person that they come from. The original manifestation of stands was somehow because Dio put his head on the Joestar bloodline, and then it started unlocking for a bunch of people across the world. That was slightly nonsensical of Araki, but they're for those of you from 4chan, they're a tulpa that you control in battle. But in all seriousness, it's a power, or even in some cases an entire person, that arises from the psyche and, for lack of a better word, life energy of a person. Their powers are shaped by the person's personality and in some cases their bloodline, because every goddamn Joestar stand is weird in some way, even if they aren't extremely powerful. Although Star
It must
Platinum
be RH negative in the bloodline. RH negative, surely.
Now, what's really funny is that stand is technically an extension of the hamon in cases, because the kanji for stand, because stand is just how it's pronounced, and in Japanese, for anyone who doesn't know, a second set of smaller characters can appear above kanji to give a reading for how the words should be pronounced. The kanji is Yuhamon, Hamon being the ripple powers of the sunlight that were used to kill vampires in Phantom Blood, and to some lesser extent in Battle Tendency. The yu at the beginning literally coming from the yu in yure, meaning ghost. So stands are just ghost ripples, at least by kanji. But there's so much more otherwise. Stands also tend to be quite varied in how they appear, due to the fact that they are manifested by the psyche of the user. The psyche and tenacity of the user can mean both a very strong stand, or a very weak stand, or a very balanced stand. Stands are really weirdly powered, and at some point they get really ridiculous, which is part of why I think Araki had Jolene Kujo lose at the end of Stone Ocean and reset the fucking universe, because things were just getting out of hand. But stands have come in the form of a gun, an ethereal purple thorn whip, they've come in the form of actual people. In fact, most stands tend to at least come in some sort of humanoid form. And stand users are just as varied. We've had siblings, boingo boingo. We've had a dog, a fucking dog, Iggy, goddammit. We've had a baby, a very murderous baby. And so there is little rhyme or reason in many cases for how a stand manifests and why, except for the fact that it is based off of the personality and psyche of the person. Now, stands have 6 stats that are generally measured. They started being measured technically in Vento Oreo in the manga, but because, we've gotten so much anime after those parts of the manga, because the manga's been around for forever. The 6 parameters are from the top of the circle that you see on the splash screen, destructive power, or Hakairyok, which is, well, exactly what it says on the tin. How destructive is the power that they can exert by themselves? How much destruction can they cause? Some are very destructive. Some are labeled as low destruction, even though they have a very destructive power, because it's something that takes time or needs very specific effects to occur. Speed is going clockwise is the next category. Speed is, well, I think mostly self-explanatory as the agility and reflexes, as well as how fast the stand can manifest outside of the person, because it does take time to manifest your stand. Mm-hmm. Range, or shate kyori, which is how far a stand can go or how far a stand's influence is, depending on their powers and whether they're very close to the person, such as Silver Chariot or Star Platinum, or whether they go very long from the person, such as Hierophant Green. Mm-hmm. They've got Stamina, which is closely tied to speed. Speed is how fast you can manifest it outside of yourself, like how fast it comes out. Stamina can affect how fast in time, like, does it just immediately come out and then the speed stat will take over of how fast it comes out of your body? Or does it take some time to manifest the stand, like with Whole Horse and his gun? Stamina also measures, how much they can activate their ability, such as Hierophant Green's Emerald Splash being basically a fucking machine gun. Or how large a gap there is between activations. We've got Precision, which is, well, I mean, again, it sounds very, very on the nose. Seimitsu dosase. And it's how accurate they are within the range of their influence. I would say that something like Hierophant Green with Emerald Splash has a low accuracy, whereas Whole Horse with the Emperor has an extremely high precision because, well, that bullet can basically hit anything he wants it to as long as he ricochets it enough. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the most ephemeral of the stats, development potential, or Teichose, which is a combination of the amount of abilities or potential abilities a stand has, how much more growth potential it has in its powers, how well its powers are being used, and the biggest example they use here is Star Platinum in Stardust Crusaders has rank A in development potential, but then is given rank complete when we see him again in Stone Ocean, because he's spent enough time with Star Platinum, practicing with Star Platinum, experimenting with Star Platinum, that he understands Star Platinum fully and has developed its abilities to the highest degree. It also doesn't help that Star Platinum absorbed the world at the end of Stardust Crusaders and became Star Platinum the World. Mm-hmm. Now, every one of these stats has 5 specific rankings it can take. E for very poor, D for poor, C for average. And average is specifically in Japanese called ningen to onaji, or literally same as a human. So anything with a C rank is supposed to be comparable to what a human can do, even if it's at the upper limits of humanity. Then we've got B, which is good, and A, which is very good. The combination of these specific stats sometimes don't really look like they're actually being properly tracked in both the manga and the anime. And I admit that's probably because of the fact that, Araki doesn't tend to follow much logic in many cases. There's also 2 ratings of none and infinite. None of us will be using those. The most infamous stand that had none for all of their rankings is Gold Experience Requiem. And that's because Gold Experience Requiem was basically just God at that point. I mean, if we're being honest here, Gold Experience Requiem could lock people in an infinite time loop forevermore.
Nevermore.
That's how they beat Diavolo. They just locked him into the consequences of his own actions for eternity. So, and then infinite, of course. Well, if any of those stats has infinite, well, the Notorious B.I.G. is the biggest infamous one for infinite there because he has like 4 stats in it or 3 stats in infinite. Mm-hmm. Specifically, speed, range, and stamina, and then of course an A in destructive power and an A in development potential as well. So like, Notorious B.I.G. is also infamous because it's a stand that lives after the host is dead.
Yeah.
That's dark as fuck.
Well, he's the only. I think he's the only stand who's ever been that.
Pretty much.
That particularly rule breaking.
There's also the fact that Vento Oreo leans heavily on the body horror.
Well, let's also include the fact that Vento Oreo breaks the rules from the very get-go, following Giorno Giovanna, a JoJo, or JoJo, because of course Italy. But Giorno Giovanna does not look like any of the Joestars because he looks a lot like Dio because he is a son that Dio had by having his head on Jonathan Joestar's body. Mm-hmm. So he's both a Dio and a JoJo.
But now early on, the stands and various abilities had leaned in were somewhat what you might expect from a shonen battle manga with a power base, but they were built around the tarot for about I'd say 3/4 of the series, and then we start seeing characters who are using stands that are named after Egyptian gods. However, the tradition after that, with starting it from Diamond is Unbreakable to everything after that, including all the way up to JoJolion. I don't know if the next part has been given a proper name yet.
I think it's been called. Let me check. JoJo Viller.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure.
The stands have all been some form of music reference. Sometimes to a band, sometimes to a singer, sometimes to a song, and that has been tradition ever since. The other thing, obviously, some stands have had their abilities in their description than their advantages and disadvantages, going more esoteric. And if some of you may recall, back when we talked about Toonami, I mentioned that when we were watching the dub of JoJo all the way through Vento Oreo, I ended up bitching every time there was a name change. I know why the name changes were done. Nobody wanted to get sued. However, just because I know why something is done doesn't mean I have to like it or accept it.
I have to correct myself. JoJo Viller is essentially it's like an Ultimania guide for JoJo.
Okay. But now, I don't know if it's ever been confirmed by Araki why he shifted towards stands as opposed to the Ripple/Hamon stuff that was already being done. I've heard speculation that he felt that he was leaning too much into Hokuto no Ken, which you look at the early designs and you can certainly see how that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jonathan, yeah.
Jonathan.
You look at how he looks like in Phantom Blood, and he looks he wouldn't look that far removed from a relative of Kenshiro.
Yes, he's very, very built. Also, I did find the name for Part 9. It's the JoJo Lands.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character is named Jodio Joestar.
Well then.
No comment.
Mm-hmm. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that fan game that you can get that is translated, which is a very interesting case.
Mm-hmm.
But I will also bring up the fact that the musical running theme, that was something that Araki was doing long before he started making music references with stands.
Oh yeah.
The most blatant one I always bring up is the Speedwagon Foundation, founded by Robert E.O. Speedwagon.
Yep, REO Speedwagon.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite from the stand era is the fact that Oingo Boingo exists.
Mm-hmm.
Those two are hilarious.
Yeah. But we are going to be exploring the idea of creating stand concepts. I dipped into this a bit when I talked about Overarms with Corey, but we're just diving a little bit further into things. There are a few ground rules, however.
Mm-hmm.
First off, try your absolute best to utilize the parameter system that we've talked about. If you can't, no hard feelings, but make the effort at the very least.
Okay.
The second rule is not only should the name and any potential techniques be a musical reference, but I am going to be asking you to cite the source for the musical reference. And a companion to that rule, as tempting as it would be to use songs from musicals or plays, that's a little bit too out there, a little bit too specific. So that's so that kind of thing is off the table.
Mm-hmm.
Understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said,
Monk, I would like to take the first spot because I have an idea that I think would be a good example for further things.
All right. What do you have in mind?
Okay, so the stand I've created is called Dust in the Wind. The source is Kansas, Dust in the Wind, obviously. Destructive power A, because its special power causes things to instantly age to decay, as implied by the name Dust in the Wind and the ideas of the song itself.
Mm-hmm.
Its speed is C because it's only about as fast as normal people. Its range is actually D because while it can reach out to do what it needs to do, it has to be the person that the stand is a part of actually touching someone or something. So it's a very low range. But it has a very high stamina because its stamina is A because it can instantly activate the effect as soon as it's touching whatever it needs to touch. And that effect can continue for as long as it's touching. The decay will spread out, and then once it stops touching, everything just falls down into dust. Its precision is B because it's not like it can just choose a single part of something and change it if it continues to hold on. It can do that if it touches and then stops touching. But if it, for example, only wants to dissolve the steering wheel of a car, it needs to touch the steering wheel first. If it touches another part of the car, that entire part of the car is going to dissolve until it reaches the steering wheel. But it can be activated pretty much over and over again. And so the precision isn't the best, but it is pretty good. And then development potential is also an A because it's clear that there's more to control with that power than just dissolving stuff. Some of the other ideas I've had are it can dissolve actual energy without touching it, so it can be used as a protective means, or it can eventually learn to dissolve things at the subatomic level to cause, ionizing radiation to hit people.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of development potential in there for whoever's using it. It's just the fact that this stand basically has to overlap its user to do any of its powers. That's why its range is low.
Mhm.
But as for how it looks, if you do see it, a lot like how Silver Chariot is kind of a suit of armor that Polnareff sometimes wears. This thing looks like, well, if everybody would please take a look at the album art for Kansas's Dust in the Wind, it looks a lot like that angelic figure in the moon, except the face is a little more malevolent, I guess is the best way to put it.
And for reference for you guys in council, I will put the link in Geek. I'll put a link to the image in GeekWatch. Not the best image. That's just the first one I could grab. Is that the angel in the moon you're talking about?
Yes. I also posted the same thing in council, except it's less colorful, so I'm going to delete it because it's clearly a lesser image.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is indeed the angelic figure. It just overlaps the user, and the face is a lot less benign. It's a lot more malevolent.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely the stand of an enemy stand user.
Yeah, just remember the enemy stand user could be anywhere.
But this is the reason I wanted to go first. This was something I've actually had in the back of my head for years, as a stand. I think it's got a good range of power, a good range of powers and flaws. Now, please remember, people, there are main character stands out there like Star Platinum that are 5 A's and a C, which the C is in range because it can only go as far as JoJo can. But the reason it's 5 A's is because it can basically destroy anything. It can stop time, and it's as precise as JoJo needs it to be. So, I did not design a main character stand. I designed, I think, a much more balanced stand. His power has a big drawback of the stand user has to be touching what's being decayed, not the stand itself. Perhaps part of development potential could be to get the range up to maybe C or even B, so that it can be a little bit further, a little more remote.
Yeah,
It's like I was going to say, like Dust in the Wind. It sounds like something. Depending on how well the wielder uses it, I was thinking the way you're describing it sounds almost like Killer Queen. In how it was in its application, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, Killer Queen's a little more broken.
It was, but you can understand where I was coming from with that reference.
I am.
So since you started, I'll go from bottom to top. So, Abraham, you're up.
Well, my stand is "Feed the Fire," a reference to the song by Cold Rain from the notoriously infamous King's Game anime. You know, this is the end. So the way this stand looks like, it's kind of like a male version of the Iron Maiden, but it is perpetually melting. It is somewhat surreal. It is constantly melting, and most of the attacks are based on insanely hot melted metal. And the angrier this thing gets, the more the range improves. I will tell you the stats in a few moments. And it is constantly twitching. A bit like those things in Silent Hill, twitching all the time. And the ability to perpetually melt allows it to shoot its a bit like emerald green, like the ranged attacks.
Emerald Splash by High River
Emerald
Green.
Splash, that one. And if this thing manages to encase someone inside of it, it starts to boil the individual alive, and the yells of pain, similar to the bull from that place in Italy. I forget the name.
The
Sicily.
The Brazen Bull
The
from
Brazen Bull, exactly.
ancient Rome, even.
The sound could shatter people's ears or produce all sorts of JoJo wacky effects. This thing can actually also encase attacks thrown at it, and the sounds produced by the distortion of the heating up of the attack also produces some weird effects. What else? Well, let's move to the stats. When it comes to destructive power, the metal is so hot that this thing could basically stand on top of the best bunker and start dripping the metal, and it will melt through the surfaces until it gets to its target. If you're standing in the wrong spot, that's deadly. When it comes in speed, it's A. Destructive power is A. Speed is A as well, because it's constantly twitching, moving around, and because of that, the precision is horrible. The precision is D, not very precise. When it comes to range, it starts at C, but if it gets really angry, the range goes up to A, but it needs to get really annoyed. And the development potential is B, because so far there is only so much you can do with the melty metal theme. But perhaps with some practice it could go up. You never know.
Yeah. So I'd say next up would be you, Rick.
Okay. I was just doing a quick look up. So the stand I have is called Dashboard Light. And appearance-wise, it is, I would say, an all-black body with a bit of automotive design in there. Not much. And his ability basically is basically from its hands or fingers, it's able to produce a very bright light that is blinding. And with the reference being Paradise by the Dashboard Light by Meatloaf. And with it, range is its biggest one, because I was making one of the one-off characters where it's going to be like a side character joke one. And with this one, it has a range of A, because if you look at the light, it's going to blind a lot of people, which a low precision because you can't control it. The stand user can't control where the light goes that much. It's basically pointing in a direction, it'll flash. He can't do individual people. Speed. It's not a combat one. It's meant for distraction. So I would say C. And same with stamina and development potential. I'll go with B, because it depends on the stand user. They might be able to adjust it to make it a bit more precision better, but I wouldn't say it's not going to be A for sure. Yeah.
All right. I think Coop. Next up on the list would be myself. And much like you, Zan, there is one concept I've had in the background for a while, and this is definitely not a main character stand. It's not even a very combative stand. The name of it is Black Diamond, after the song of the same name by seminal Finnish power metal act Stradivarius.
Mm-hmm.
An act that has had so many lineup changes that you could do a whole music festival of just former Stradivarius members. In fact, it's had so many lineup changes that no one from the original lineup is still there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, let me see how many. Okay, I didn't want the type of violin. I didn't want the type of violin. I wanted the band. Let's see. There have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different former members. Some of them are full on former members. Some of them are session musicians. Some of them were lineup guys. So it's actually 14 former members. Stradivarius has been around since '84.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the appearance of the stand, I would describe it as looking like a bullseye lantern that appears to be made not out of standard metal, but made out of obsidian. You know, a rock that resembles the appearance of a lantern, which has a ring on it and is attached to a staff. It's basically meant to be a lantern that's on a stick. A very long stick, but a stick nonetheless. The other thing to note with it is that when it is active, the light is black. And in fact, if I were to visualize it, I'd have it that the light is negative with anything that's in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for this has to do with its ability. It is a sensory blocker. Anything that is within its light, quote unquote, the user can't be perceived. He's there. He's right in front of you. You can't see him. You can't smell him. You can't hear him. He is all but invisible, even if he technically isn't.
What if you touch the guy?
Doesn't register.
Mm.
You might touch him, but you would have no way of knowing, because the registering of that sense is blocked.
But you would still feel the resistance. Like you don't feel anything, but your hand simply won't move forward if you're pushing your hand against the chest of the individual.
It would be like pushing against a wall of air.
Ah, okay.
Like the point is, as far as senses go, he doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, of course the catch is like any sort of invisibility based power in fiction. As soon as he does anything aggressive, it's the effect stops. He can't be aggressive and use that power at the same time. And as far as because of this, a lot of these stats would be considered very low end. Destructive power is an E, for obvious reasons. You can't do offense with this stand.
Mm-hmm.
Speed is also an E. the user has to hold. The stand is in the form of an object that the user has to hold. Um, range is actually is a B, because because in this sense the range is the range of the light. Uh, stamina would be an A, since it's not a massive drain, so its user can maintain it for hours, if not days at a time, without needing to take a break. And precision would be probably D, because it's not anything that's in the light can't detect him. That light goes in all directions. Is essentially a sphere where he is at the epicenter and is imperceptible. As far as development potential, uh, I would say it'd probably be A. I would say it would probably be A, as far as how you would develop it with sufficient training. It'd probably be things like being able to control what people perceive with their senses in that zone, or create, or being able to, and this is the most likely direction, creating a kind of synesthesia like effect where where the senses start getting cross-wired. Where you're smelling sound and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing color.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I know it would be tempting to say this could make someone hallucinate, but I think what would be far more interesting is just use in terms of using it offensively with enough development, using it to create what I would call a data bomb, where you're just you're just loading someone's senses with so much junk data that it completely messes with them. Kind of the sensory version of like a chaff grenade.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's not going to do any permanent damage, but it is going to disorient them. Because I don't I don't see this as a hero or enemy stand. I see this as a neutral one, because it is all about being essentially the perfect spy. Because and there is the potential weakness that somebody might notice something's off if they touch him while it's active, but other than that, as long as nobody gets that close, it's all but impossible to know where he is.
It actually sounds like a good stand for an entire episode when there is this mystery that the main characters, realize that their senses aren't exactly working well, and perhaps that thing was nearby all along, hidden or camouflaged in some way.
Yeah. Uh, I've always found the idea of using camouflage proper to be an interesting thing to explore. I know you'll notice I didn't bring up a chameleon at all, because anyone who's seen chameleons in the wild will laugh at the idea of them blending to their environment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an octopus, on the other hand, yeah, they're gonna blend in. They're also assholes to anybody who gets close. There's an infamous GIF of a octopus just punching nearby fish because it can.
Mm-hmm.
Although they can be quite grateful as well. Remember those videos when someone rescues some octopus and the octopus comes back and like rubs the person with the tentacle and then goes away?
Mm-hmm. But sometimes just because they feel like it, they'll punch fish.
Octopi are massively intelligent, though. They can open jars from the inside and navigate mazes quite easily.
And each tentacle has a brain, so that's also very interesting.
Yeah.
Brains.
All we want to do is eat your brains.
That's a good thing. Problem: most of us don't have brains anymore.
Skill
Speak for
issue.
yourself.
I said most of us. I was not including you too.
Like I said, skill issue. Then again, you have that infamous video of an orca deciding to just punt random sea life just because it can.
Mm-hmm.
We know that you want to be doing that as well.
Everybody forgets that orcas are some of the biggest assholes in the sea.
How many yachts have been destroyed by them thus far in the last year?
Yes.
Bunk, your students have learned from the greatest.
Mm-hmm. And quite telling that you bring up a yacht in that conversation.
Oh?
You know why, Zan.
Sink the yacht.
I don't have to. That's already being done.
What did you two do?
Oh, we
Nothing.
didn't do anything.
Well, no. I did do something. I made a video and I announced it on Twitter and stuff. No. We alone didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But with hundreds of thousands of other people, I don't think Niji Sanji's having such a good time. Sink the yacht. Anyway, I think Rail's there, Monk, and we should get to Coops and his stand.
Yep. So, Coops, what do you got for me?
I've been thinking about it for a good while, and I'll be honest. I think my stand wouldn't be an offensive stand as well. The stand I have is Dupalicious, based off the song title "Spotty Dupalicious" by Outkast.
All right.
And the way the stand's designed is pretty much from the man with the blue striped suit with the top hat that's sitting on the chair in the picture of the album cover.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have for abilities is pretty much in reference to the song and the fact that it's inspired by reggae vibes, and the fact that during the breaks between each verse, trumpet solo will play during that time, and that trumpet in itself will pretty much slow everybody down, or pretty much slow their movement speed within a 300-mile radius. And the closer you are to the stand, the more effective you are. And if you're further and further away from the stand, you'll still feel its effects if you're still within that radius, but you won't feel it as much as the people that's close to it.
Mm-hmm.
So for stats, power is probably gonna be a B to a high C, mainly because again, it depends on where you at, like whether you're further away or very close. It really depends on how powerful the stand ability would be. Speed, I took into account, is going to be like at least an E, because the song itself is very slow. It's not fast. It's just smooth. Like there's no there's no speeding it up. It's always going to be at a slow moving pace, but still sounds smooth as well. Range is probably going to be B as well because that's 300 mi- That's pretty much anything within a 300-mile radius.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Stamina probably going to end up being an E because like the stand itself, while its ability is pretty powerful, it's actually pretty weak when it comes to the physical side of things.
Stamina also measures how long the ability can be maintained, or how long between uses of the ability occur.
Well, the ability will probably last for about a good 15 minutes minimum, 20 minutes max.
And then how long until it can be activated again?
Probably for 15.
Yeah, so I'd say Stamina E fits because it has a long time, but it also has a long cooldown.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier, and like if we're playing for a long time, you're gonna eventually lose a lot of stamina, and you won't be able to play. You won't be able to play an instrument right for like another few minutes. So you
Nope.
need those breaks. You need those breaks at a time too. So
Yep. Right. So what about its precision?
precision. Uh, I'd probably give it like a C because it's kind of like in the middle due to its radius.
Mm.
And development would probably get a B because if you practice hard enough, you could probably increase its radius, and then you can get a whole lot of people within its sounds to probably like maybe 500 if you're good enough.
All right.
It seems that most of us gave potential a B.
Yeah,
Well,
pretty much.
Yep.
Mm. I mean, I can see why we did. We created stands that have clear flaws and clear strengths that can be built on.
Yeah.
But we weren't trying to build the bad guy stand right out of the gate. We wanted to have a little fun with it.
Oh, I built a villain stand for sure. I mean, being
same
able
here.
to, but
Same here.
being able to dissolve things, yeah, by aging them to nothingness. My next stand, however, is a little more interesting because it's how I interpreted the song.
Mm-hmm.
So, we ready to move on to stands round 2 or no?
I would say so, and for this one, I'm going to put a bit of a secondary rule.
Okay.
For round 2, these ones have to be offensive stands.
So,
yes.
I'm going to note that an offensive stand does not have to have a high destructive power, and my example is Sea Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Sea Moon's destructive power is rated E. But Sea Moon controls fucking gravity. So, I mean, I didn't just design an offensive stand. I designed this is a main character stand. I'm going to be honest here.
Mm-hmm.
The name of the stand, and I think Monk might be the only one who gets this reference, is Beyond the Bounds.
Is that from the video game? No.
That is. Oh man,
Zone of Enders?
Zone of Enders,
Uh-huh.
Second Runner, or Anubis, Zone of the Enders.
I love that song. Uh-huh.
Yeah, Beyond the Bounds is a fantastic song, even though most of it is a made-up language that is attempting to sound something like ancient Egyptian.
Well, let's not forget that that Anubis's theme is just taking the theme song from the first game and flipping the audio.
Yep. Anubis' theme is great. But Beyond the Bounds has a destructive power of E, because the actual body of this being is a bird. It's a bird about, let's say, the size of a... Take the blue jay and make it 2 sizes bigger. Like a blue jay the size of a regulation football. American football, excuse me. Abraham's here. I had to. But but the bird is pearlescent in a way. It shifts colors depending on what angle you're looking at it, in a iridescent hue of colors. And its destructive power is E because of that. However, its powers are threefold. And one of the powers is based off of Laplace's Demon Monk, being able to know both the position and the speed of or the position and the velocity of any known thing at the same time. But because of the fact that it has this ability to know the position and velocity of matter, which is supposed to be impossible when you're looking at things at the particulate level, it has the ability to do things like erase people's memories or block out the stars in a certain way, in a certain range. The range is an A, of course. It can block out the stars above an entire city if it really wants to. But the biggest thing that makes it a really powerful offensive stand is by knowing both the position and velocity of anything, it can predict. And by being able to predict, it can, well, essentially hit you before you even intended to move in that direction, or things of that nature. And of course, because it is a bird mostly just made of light, its ultimate control is light coalescence, light condensation, whatever you want to call it. It can take light from anywhere, any light source, and giant laser you.
Probably carries flashlights and the like.
Hell yes. But this is it has a speed of A, because I can't give it a speed of infinite, and I won't. But if we were going to give it the speed of light, that would be speed of infinite. Range of B, because right now it only covers large cities at most. Stamina of A, because the bird can basically be out all the time, and people just think it's a cute bird that somebody owns. And then, of course, its prediction ability is probably constantly in use, whether the stand itself is manifested or not. Obviously, because it can track the position and momentum of every object within its range, it's a precision of A. And then a development potential of A, because if he really does get it to the speed of light, speed and range will both go to infinite, because, well, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Destructive power will continue to remain E, though, because, again, the thing itself is with its own body, which is usually what destructive power describes. It also describes how fast you can hurt stuff in a given time. Condensing light is not an easy thing. It takes, but it is very precise. You could have a tiny cutting laser, or give it a tiny more bit of time. A tiny bit of more time being like 10 seconds. And has anybody ever seen a spinal weapon on Space Battleship Yamato?
Yeah.
Everybody likes the wave motion gun, right? I like the wave motion gun. But there you go. Purely a cheeky predictionary abilities, because I like having a main hero that can outwit the enemy. Also, by having this bird, this person can pull a shulk and go, "A vision!" if he really wants to.
Yeah. So what about you?
I just made it on the fly real quick. This one is Blessless. It looks like a spider made out of cloth. Blessless, like the ending from Bastard, the anime. The attack is a master of puppets attack is there?
Master of
Master-
Puppets, what does it do?
Well, in this case, the thing shoots threats and controls people, but it augments their strength by 50 overall. So when it comes to destructive power, it is B because it's a bit powerless, but as soon as those threats attach themselves to one or more people, depending on the individual, the strength is tremendous and he has a very powerful or several powerful puppets fast, and when the thread that it shoots misses, it needs to pull it back. The range is really good. That's A. When it comes to stamina, it is not particularly good in that department, and nothing noteworthy about it. Precision, it is actually really high, again with those threats. The development potential, I think that's a solid B again, because it depends completely on the puppets that it attaches itself to. There is no variation. Perhaps there could be some modifications to the trajectory of the threats that it shoots out, or perhaps creating some web, but again, it falls into B.
Mm-hmm.
The only stand I remember being able to do puppetry was Justice, and even then it did it through the wounds of the parties.
Mm.
Yeah. Rick, what do you have in mind?
I have two. One of them I really want to do. I believe it's offensive, which is what the limitation you gave us this time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very similar to the first one Zan did, at least in terms of how it was used, and that's the only thing that's like, okay, does that count as offensive or not?
I mean, being able to destroy things by aging them to death is absolutely offensive, but that's
I
dust
would
in the
say
wind.
it was more so the application of it. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one I had is called Runaround Sue. And not so much it's a let me pull things out to close the window. There you are. In terms of ability, it was more of a thief thing. So the person would steal I would say, emotions, or the energy that comes from the emotions from people,
Mm-hmm.
and with it, usually in terms of reasoning and all that such, insert like it's a stand for like someone who wants to stay eternally young or so. So that type of thing. The stand itself basically looks like a Moz woman who looks like it looks like a gold digger almost. And as for range, it has very little range because, like it's one of those ones where the user has to have contact with the victim for them to absorb their emotions, aka their energy. So it's a very low range, but it has a lot of, I would say, a high stamina
Mm-hmm.
because, yeah, they have to use it for a long time. The longer they are touching someone and absorbing, the more they can get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it would have depending on how much would be, the amount of time between uses equals the amount of time you just use. So if let's say you took a little bit of energy from someone, not much, just enough to get back into a battle. Okay, you get that much energy back. But if you say, I would say it would take an hour or two before you could use that again,
Mm-hmm.
relatively speaking.
So if I understand it correctly, this thing fits from any emotion, right?
Any emotion, primarily positive.
Positive. So, for example, you could go to a concert or a sports game or something and start eating it all.
In a way, but it has to be done through physical. You have to physically.
Easy enough to get yourself into the crowd and start touching people.
Mosh
Some-
pits.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Mosh pits, raves.
Yep.
That one bloodbath scene from the first Blade movie.
Uh-huh.
You only bring that one up. You're only bringing that one up because you're black.
Fuck you.
And we're walking, and we're walking.
Mhm.
Speed. I wouldn't say B, potentially D, because like doesn't like the sand is not going to move that far out from the user. But in terms of the ability, eh. And a destructive power, like if not used right, you could literally just turn someone into a husk. So I would say A. Which
Remember
also
that
leads,
the destructive power describes not only how destructive, but how quickly.
yep, that's why I was saying. That's why I was saying A. Because
Okay.
yeah, you could like it is what you can do with it is dangerous, but at the same time, it's also depending on how much you take. And I would say again A. It's like you like at the start, it would be just like positive emotions, but enough control. You would say you just need positive emotions. It just needs to be a very powerful emotion,
Mhm.
so it can get to that point.
Um, I just realized what would be the best or worst place to have that person visit. Churches.
Mm.
And
Well, it's like relied on like emotions. I would say more so like pure basic ones. I don't know how faith would work on that.
Well, no, because a lot of people experience euphoria when they're worshiping.
So what you're saying, Rick, is more like instinctive emotions.
Anyway, still though, oh god, the stand users are is the head priest at a church.
I was about to say the head priest at a Catholic church specifically.
I was actually gonna go with a Baptist church, but okay.
No Catholic.
Well, everybody has to be touched for communion, monk. Anointed with the oil, given the communion wafer.
Yep.
Yep. And with
Given
that,
the
okay, couple
given the
seconds from you, couple seconds from you, like last couple seconds with the standard congregation. Yeah, that'll last a week or two.
um remember communion wafers are Jesus.
All this
I
talk
know.
about Catholics and touching is very uncomfortable.
You know, I wasn't gonna go there, but
It was inevitable.
mhm.
Well, as a certain Australian comedy musician would say, fuck the motherfucking Pope.
You talking about Tim Minchin?
Yes.
I figured.
But
Can you blame me? It's catchy.
yes,
I can still blame you because you're not Tim Minchin.
I can still blame you because I choose to.
That too.
Does it look like I give a care?
Your compliance is not a factor.
Nor does the amount of how much care I give to your statement.
Oh. But as far as me, um, let's see. I would say I th- I do have one that is another back burner concept. Um, and that is coat of arms. Obviously, after the song of the same name by Sabaton.
I knew it.
No, I need to start listening
I
to their
knew
music again.
I knew he was going to bring up a Sabaton song at some point.
I was actually debating between either using Sabaton or Gamma Ray.
Fair.
Uh,
If you weren't going to bring up Sabaton, I was going to bring it up next time.
yeah, but coat of arms. It one would look at it and think that it's all that not all that impressive, because the idea is its user constructing um different types of soldiers. Um, the thing is that it has to be from a soldiers from a particular battle that he knows about, or is in the place where it happened. And the knowledge or the place is going to determine the number, is going to determine the base amount of number and strength that he can call to it without expending more effort into it.
Man, being on the beaches of Normandy would be really good for him.
I have this image of him in around where Gettysburg was, and it looks like he's just charging the enemy by himself, and then you see hundreds of people doing a bayonet charge.
Raise bayonets!
Mm-hmm. The Now, as far as what type of soldiers make the appearance, it can be just about any, whether it be modern, whether it be classical. The there's a great deal of variety with that, but because of these stats, it's not meant to be used as a leading an army from a distance. It's meant to be the frontline commander archetype.
And imagine throwing him into Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
All these flavors, and you chose to be guerrilla warfare.
The big approach would be just using these these numerous allies to effectively bum rush the enemy, or utilizing a whole lot of team tactics in a one-on-one encounter.
Mm-hmm.
This back in DBZ, the reason why the androids were such a threat, aside from raw power, was the team tactics that they would use.
Mm-hmm.
Battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
So since we're dealing with at most 50 yards, I'm thinking C. D I think would be if it were a lot closer.
Mm-hmm.
Stamina, I would say stamina is a B.
Makes sense.
Because of the fact that you're dealing with a protracted fight, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Precision, probably C, because again he's making a lot of peak humans, but they're still humans in terms of parameters. And as far as development potential, I would say C right now, but that's only because there's a much higher upper limit as the user studies more battles. Uh, the there is one catch though. If he's using the appearance, they essentially look like different types of soldiers, but all of them have the same blue aura that the user would have. You know that flame aura that we often see when stand use or Hamon is used. That's kind of the approach that I'm going with. They look like spirits of soldiers essentially, or I suppose I could reference the ghosts of the Shinsengomi that Hijikata has in Drifters.
Oh yeah.
Because that's in the same general principle. Even though he's not going berserk, seeing a Shimazu.
Shimatsu!
But the key, as its user learns more about different historical battles and the like, there's a bigger variety of potential forces that can be called upon. Just as long as the more that its user studies, the more potential forms the stand can take. Which would that technically mean that that development should be infinite?
No, because from what you've said, it's it's still only just summoning the people who battled in whatever battlefield that they're on or they have knowledge thereof. In that case, even if the manifestation gets stronger than the original people, it's still just those people. It's not like they're becoming gods.
Yeah, I would say I'd say in regard to that, I'd probably put development at B. With enough training, not non-human things could be brought in. Say bringing in horse cavalry in order to do a lance charge, or bringing in tanks. And since you brought up Vietnam, imagine him using the stand, and all of a sudden you've got 6 Ontoses ready to fire everything. Because further, the Ontos, also known as the Thing, was a case of glorious insanity.
Yep. It was essentially a tank, sort of.
Yeah, I'll put an image in GeekWatch.
Yeah, it's technically a light armored vehicle, which had something like 6 106 millimeter self recoilless rifles, or M40 recoilless rifles.
Yep, they took out the main gun, replaced it with 6 recoilless rifles, and gave it a 50 cal spotting rifle.
No, it wasn't a 50 cal, Monk. It's a 30 caliber.
Yeah, 30 cal that was firing tracer rounds. That was a spotter rifle.
Yeah. This is the M1919 Browning. That's why it's a 30 caliber. It's not a BMG.
Yeah. Although that would be hilarious.
Yeah, if it were a Modus, that would be fucking great.
Yeah.
The funny thing about the image that you posted, it kind of looks like it has a mecha head in the middle. Just take a closer look and something there, like a mecha.
But
Zendarian Enterprises, one of their many R&D ideas.
No, Zendarian Enterprises wasn't around when this was made.
Yeah,
but you're saying tell me what Zendaya wouldn't try to turn that into a mecha.
No, too inefficient.
There.
No, you would probably just take an Abrams, figure out a way to put even more bazookas on it, and call it a day.
I can neither confirm nor deny that we have any sort of contracts or something like that.
Who am I kidding? You'd end up just taking the Abrams X and making it even more insane.
Again, I can neither confirm nor deny if we have any such contracts.
And the reason why I say more insane for everyone who doesn't know about the Abrams X, which isn't available, it's more of a proof of concept. At night, the tank is practically invisible. Not only that, but it has an electric backup engine that it can utilize. Which is already enough of a problem because the Abrams has the nickname of the Whispering Death for how quiet it is.
One of the quietest tanks around.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I'd also like to point out that a lot of the things on the Abrams X are AI assisted.
Yeah. I believe there was also a version of the Challenger that can wall hack. But the idea is that an advanced version of Coat of Arms might be able to utilize armored vehicles, whether that be tanks, whether that be I suppose at a high end you could probably call in an airstrike. So imagine that kind of thing. The battle's going in. He tells everybody to take cover, and then three planes do a bombing run.
Yep.
Or just have a bunch of planes come in with rotary cannons, and then the gun go burr.
Oh, you just want more warthogs. Got it.
Yeah, even though the Warthog is, in normal circumstances, the Warthog is overrated. A Warthog made by the Stand would probably actually be good at tank busting.
Mm-hmm.
But the key thing is that because it is a Stand, you don't have to work. With more modern setups, you wouldn't have to worry about ammo.
Mm-hmm.
So, since you brought up something like Vietnam, you have this particular Stand user could potentially do the Troa Barton School of Combat.
That'd be fun.
Just turn the corner and all of a sudden you've got a whole line of people with miniguns.
Mm-hmm.
But the exception to the rule when it comes to the stats is that all of the base stats go up about 1 grade if he's in the battlefield that's associated with whatever form Coat of Arms takes. So, in other words, if he's aware of pike and shot combat, he could summon that anywhere with the standard stats.
Mm-hmm.
If he's doing that in Gettysburg, everything goes up. Everything goes up, and he can bring out more of them easily. Because the real drain isn't in the strength of arms; it's how much stuff he's calling. Essentially, his stamina acts like his pop cap.
So you essentially, Monk, what you're telling us, and I caught this early on, but didn't want to say anything to see if anybody else would bring it up. You're telling us that you've just created an RTS out of a Stand. That's all.
Yeah, well, on that note, guys, I'm going to head on out. I gotta do some stuff.
Man, stay frosty. Coops, what do you have when it comes to this particular concept?
One thing comes to mind, and that would be the name of the Stand would be Tragic Revenge. based off the song Knights vs. Reality, a tragic revenge from the Knight series.
Mm-hmm.
Concept simple. Pretty much given most of the qualities that came from Riala, but making it into like this entire specter, and his abilities, in a sense.
You might need to expound on that for those who are not familiar with Knights.
Right. For those of you at home that have not played or are familiar with the Knight series, is basically like a score attack flying platformer type of game. And the main concept about that game is dreams, and the main enemy you fight there are nightmares, and Riella happens to be one of the high ranking nightmares in the whole entire series. And pretty much their main objective is to go after visitors, which are the dreamers, which are like kids or whatnot, and actually take their idia, which is their life, which is their source for their courage, their intelligence, their growth, their hope, and purity, which is like 5 idia in total, which I just already named. But they can't take the idia of courage because that's like the main one that's keeping them in there. But if they happen to find a way to take it, then they're pretty much stuck in the world of nightmares for good. Now, Riala, on the other hand, is essentially a mirror version of Knights, only a lot more evil and has a lot more abilities compared to our Purple Jester. He essentially has the ability to drill dash, which is pretty much like Sonic Spin Dash, only you're drilling straight through, which could take out enemies in quick succession and also break down walls and such. But he also has the ability to dualize. Now, dualizing is the concept of only Knights and Riala have that ability. So let's say, for instance, a visitor were to be able to touch Riala or Knights, they actually become one being, and what's been confirmed in Knights Journey of Dreams, they can mirror each other's movements. Like Knights can mirror a visitor's movements and vice versa. So what I have for an ability for Tragic Revenge is kind of like that. All they just need is just one touch, and they can actually absorb that particular person for a set amount of time. And when they dualize, they actually become a little bit powerful. Like their stats go up a bit and whatnot. Pretty much, essentially using them as a vessel in order to get stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the way you describe it, would it be a case where the stand could possess people, given what you described with dualize?
Correct.
Or in this case, end up fusing with its own user.
I wouldn't necessarily say it will fuse with its own user, but pretty much anybody that touches him or that Tragic Revenge touches. Because, like, as we've seen in Knights, all you need to do is just come up to them, and then you'll actually become Knights, or in this case, Tragic Revenge, and you get the abilities. You get their ability to drill dash. You get the ability to transform and whatnot. Something like that.
I could certainly see it. Where would you put the stat spread on it?
For power, by itself, it would be at least a D, because they'll still have its abilities and whatnot. It'll just not have that little stat buff when compared to dualizing with another person. But when dualized, it would actually be close to close to A, because not only do you have the abilities, but you also have the idiot of courage boosting their boosting their stats and whatnot, like in the games.
Mm-hmm.
Speed comes down to a C because while the drill dash is fast, it is not as fast as compared to like other stands. Like it will not go to light speed or any of that. It will just maybe increase the speed by about maybe 2 or 3 points faster than when it's not dualized.
Mm-hmm. I can certainly get that. Now with the now you mentioned speed, so what about when it comes to the remaining four?
Range is obviously going to be an E because most of the time, if they want to defeat a person or whatnot, they'll have to come a little close. Like for example, if I were to touch a third level nightmare and like one of the lower beings, I would have to get close to them either with a drill dash or I would actually touch them and push them, and make them like into a little monster ball or whatever. So that's why it's like an E. Like it's very emphasized when it comes to close range, but long range is its biggest weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Stamina would probably be a D, mainly because while you can while dualized, there is a bit of a time limit. It could go from like a minute 20 at max to a minute at minimum. So it'll be it'll be a good power boost to have, but time is limited and the limit is very low.
Mm-hmm. I could get that. And as far as developmental potential,
Developmental potential. Uh, hmm. I would see it. I would see it becoming a little better when it comes to the speed aspect. So I would say if you can just drill, if you continue training when it comes to the drill dash, you could probably be a lot more faster than you already are. But then again, you'll also have stamina in a way. You can, so in a sense, be you can be powerful as much as you can, but again, you got to keep in mind that time limit though. So how fast? It's pretty much essentially how fast can you go in under like a minute and 20 seconds.
mm-hmm.
And I believe that you can improve that improve that despite that little flaw if you play your cards right, of course. And given that I used to speed run Nice Journey of Dreams, it is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The key thing with all of this is demonstrating a wide range of possibility without falling into some of the traps that a lot of people do when it comes to adapting the a power based affair in a given anime or manga, because I've looked at a lot of cases and a lot of people just try and replicate what was already in the shows, which is kind of missing the point in my not so humble opinion.
Right.
As I've said before, nobody wants to play as the X-Men. They want to play as a student in the institute. And in that same vein, somebody who wants to, even though some people will make a XP of an existing stand, that eventually they'll start branching out. There's also the fact that I did notice an organic pattern with each stand that had been presented. Very a very clear design of advantages and disadvantages with each. Um, but I think that's a as good of a spread as we'd get. There are more potential ones that we could go with, but two for each of us is I'd say decent enough.
It's usually more than we do when we do these creation episodes, because usually we're using life path generators and it takes a long time to generate on each one.
Mm-hmm. But the and I know some might say, why didn't you do the cries? Because, and the reason for that is no. And I know that there's a list of types on the wiki. I didn't want to go with that because that type list is all over the place.
Well, it's 5 broad categories.
Mm-hmm.
It's and it's split between 2 axes on a grid, with the fifth type being anything that doesn't fit the grid at all.
And that doesn't quite work for how I like to do things.
Yeah, the I guess the best way to put it in this case is it splits between humanoid, non-humanoid, artificial, and natural, and then for anything that doesn't fall under the various combinations of those categories, they have something called phenomenon / other.
Mm-hmm. Do 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 do.
Phenomena.
Do 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 do.
Phenomena.
Do 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 do. Activision fucking sucks.
But
how's that?
An example. Yeah, an example. I'll give an example of one each for the classifications.
Mm-hmm.
And
gotta look out. See you later, guys. Have a great time.
Stay frosty.
See you later, Abe.
Thank you later.
So, for the first classification of natural and humanoid, Star Platinum is a natural humanoid looking. For artificial and humanoid, Silver Chariot. For natural non-humanoids, I think the most would be Hermit Purple. Would be the most recognizable. Mm-hmm. For artificial non-humanoids, Emperor, because it's a gun. And then, of course, phenomenon types were things like Toth or Noom. I think let me see if I can find a really good one here. So Noom was the stand of Oingo from Oingo Boingo, and it allowed him to shape his face in order to disguise himself. That was really it. That was all Noom was. That's why it doesn't fit any of the others. It's also why it's only an A in stamina and an E in everything else.
Mm-hmm. Which certainly makes sense.
But that's essentially what a phenomenon type is. A type that doesn't really fit under any of the other 4.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, I think that's going to do it for this particular episode of GeekWatch. We will be back here next week. And speaking of that, we'll be back tomorrow with the Parliament of Geeks covering Fugo Keiji.
Fugo Keiji, the Millionaire Detective Balance Unlimited.
Mm-hmm. Tuesday, the Men Who Stare at Sports Ball will return as we do a debriefing. And of course,
but whose briefs are you stealing?
Ha. Do I look like Cosma to you? Don't answer that. But yeah, we'll be and hey there, Whispers. We'll be doing a debriefing of the NFL season on Tuesday. Along with a few other bits of laughter that's going to happen because, well, we're gonna have to talk about the Cowboys. We're gonna be laughing. Wednesday, I'm gonna be interviewing Jonathan Wright once again. the guy behind Mecha vs. Kaiju, who's now doing a new project called Shen Battler Aurora. Well, not exactly new. It's a revisit to his take on doing that when he was using Fate. It says that it's using 5e, but it's not really it's using 5e as much as Magi Knights uses 5e.
So really not that much anymore.
No, it's this weird combination of elements of 5e and Fate. Oh. On Thursday, I'll be doing an interview with Scott Ulls on his Fast Action Hero project. Scott Ulls has, of course, been on the show in the past, whether it be for Maximum Apocalypse or Beta Red. And of course, after that, I'm going to be doing Valley of the Judge with Monarch as we look at the talent system for Shattered. Friday, I've got Zan and I will be returning to Valley of the Judge with more of Dames of Astoria. And actually, I do have to correct myself. I will not be doing Shattered on the 15th. I'm doing the one-shot with him that day. The one shot in question is going to be Soar Beyond the Stars by Jacob D.C. Ross, a guy who I've mentioned in the past. But on Friday, Zan and I will be going through the trait system for Dames of Astoria. Saturday, in the early afternoon, I'll be interviewing Shep for his next expansion of the Gaia Complex called Evolution by Design. But also, later on, we'll be doing a special Valley of the Judge covering DC-20, at least the alpha version that is available. And I've had some time to look at some parts of it. There's some interesting stuff happening. So please look forward to that. And let me go on the Twitch side and let me start the countdown there. So we'll be bugging Rabbit in a bit. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk, and join the watch.